Dude, if I have a giant fucking television here, why am I sitting here like this? I don't leave the house. I don't go anywhere unless you're on, like, you're a dude and you're going on a bus every day, or I don't know what people do I see these fucking Nintendo commercials, and then the guys like playing fucking basketball, and then they're like playing fucking Switch on the basketball court. Who's doing that?
Time to talk about games played by Ryan and Mike. A modern, a retro video game show. Yes, we talk about games and sometimes other stuff like Star Trek. It's a blast, our gaming podcast.
What's up, everybody? You're watching a new episode of Talk About Games. I'm Ryan. Mike's right there.
I'm here. Hi. That's like what?
We're trying to add some decorum to the show.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. They all need to know right off the bat. I'm like the most unprofessional like fucking person in the world. But I guess that's why I'm here. I'm to balance this shit heap out or whatever.
So Valve recently announced that they're going to be doing a handheld console. It's called Steam Deck. And when I saw it,
are people be making jokes like the fucking upper decker jokes? Like, is this
all the stuff? Or Stream Deck? You know, Elgato has the thing where you push the buttons.
I have one of those.
Yeah, do you use that? You have like clapping sounds or like a whoopee cushion.
When I did the thing, Ryan built this thing, guys, the fucking Twitch switch, I called it. Ryan built that for me because I don't know how to do anything. So I was like, Ryan, I need a giant switch. So we went out to Home Depot, and Ryan's like, I'm gonna build this fucking switch, Mike. I'm gonna fucking build this switch. And he fucking built. He got like metal pieces and shit. You want to tell the people how you built this fucking thing? It was amazing.
Oh yeah. So the Twitch switch. So we had a conversation. The day we had the conversation, the hour we had the conversation was when it started getting built.
I know. So I was like, I want to do a thing on stream like Conan O'Brien used to do. He had the Walker Texas Ranger lever. I want it to be a tribute to that. And you pull the switch, and instead of me hitting a button, it would be funnier if I pull a big cartoony like lever. But I was like, how can I actually do that? You know. So I was, and then Ryan solved the problem for me, basically.
So basically what it came down to is I wanted a big heavy thing that he would pull and then it would fling back on its own. But
on the other end of it, because you had mentioned the Stream Deck, so Ryan built the mechanics and the wood and the whole piece, but I have the Stream Deck over here, so I don't use it anymore. So spoiler alert, I guess. And I set up all the sound effects on the Stream Deck, so I'd hit the button and the thing at the same time. That's how I was doing it. And I had a thing to where when I hit the sound effect, it would do a chunk, and then the clip would play on stream. So that's how that like worked. But not to go so off topic, but I retired the bit because I used to watch a lot of late night like talk shows and shit, and they would do funny things, and I'd be like, oh god, I haven't seen them do that skit in a while. But once you start doing the show yourself, I realize why the skits don't go on forever, because it gets to be not funny. You ever watch Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
And they have a fucking character and they drive it into the fucking ground. Like, it's funny the first time. The first time Chris Farley ever did that in a van down by the river and he crushes the table. Yeah. It was like the funniest thing. And then he did it again. And then he did it again. And by the 11th time, it was really funny the first time. But the 11th time, it wasn't really funny. So I retired it. And people were like, when are you going to bring it back? It's like, it's dead. It's over. Go watch the old shit. Yeah. Anyway, so Steam Deck.
All right. So Steam Deck, it's like a Switch-style handheld. It has a dock, but you don't need to have the dock to use it.
I hope it's better than the Switch's dock.
It runs on a special version of Linux. It has an AMD processor. It's more powerful than a Switch is. It is built so that you can play all your games on Steam on this new handheld, and it has a special compatibility layer that it uses. Even though it runs Linux, it doesn't run Windows, so it should be able to play all your Windows-based games, and it should be able to play them quickly.
I mean, listen, it's awesome. I love Steam. I play it all. I use Steam all the time. I think it's great. I think they should absolutely have something like this. It makes perfect sense that they would do this. I will probably never use it unless I'm on a plane because I play all my video games on a television. I don't play games handheld. But that said, you know, I'll be going to LA. I probably will play my Switch on the plane, and that's the only time I ever play handheld stuff. So this is really cool. To be honest with you, like if I had this right now, I'd be taking this with me on the plane. And I would play it. So I think that's you know, I think that's really cool. I'm even seeing this thing that you're showing on screen, and I see that it says Hades and Doom Eternal. It's funny that it's like the same shit you could play anyway on the Switch. So that tells me right off the bat that they better have some shit. And I guess it's Steam, so they'll have a lot of things that aren't going to be on
anything else.
On anything else. And I would hope that you could play literally anything that Steam has on it.
That's the dream. I'm wondering if you could play like the new flight sim, like the Microsoft Flight Sim. I don't think you're playing that on this. I think there are limitations.
Okay. Yeah.
Like there has to be, it's not going to be every game. There's going to be some game made by some people that it runs in DOS box or something.
So it probably won't run everything, but it'll probably run quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's going to have growing pains just like anything else. But, you know, the first time I saw Steam Deck, it's like, yeah, the hardware is probably good. Valve has historically, whether it's the Index or any Valve hardware that's come out, even the little Steam Deck things they had before and things like that. The controller was a little weird, but it was well built. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be a well built system. I think that Steam is the best storefront, right? Steam is the Netflix of games. We talked about before how, you know, now we have Netflix and Paramount and all of these different services. If you take Steam, you take Switch, you take Xbox.
Are you talking about the way you navigate it?
No, I'm talking about the games.
Oh, okay.
You take Xbox, PlayStation, all the stores have their exclusives, but Steam is head and shoulders above. The best.
You can't compete with it.
You can't compete with it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Naturally, because the storefront is so much about what a console is today, Valve should have a console. And they tried to do it with the Steam machines, and it wasn't ready for prime time. Steam machines were a big failure, but I think this thing might be a success.
Also, that name sucks.
Which is Steam Machine. Yeah, I guess so. The handheld technology has just gotten so good. The fact we have iPads now that have desktop.
Yeah.
The iMac and the iPad have the same processor. That's the world we live in.
Right. It's getting to the point where everything kind of like does the same thing, and it like everything's sort of like merging into one thing. That's why I always felt like Nintendo was always smart, and even if it's not Nintendo, but it tends to always be somebody's got to come in with like the left field ideas, because everything is just kind of becoming the same fucking thing, and that's not good.
Yeah,
you know, you need to have some wacky idea come in and be like, oh shit, look at this over here. You know, that's cool if it's a good idea.
Well, this console,
sometimes it's not, like the Power Glove.
Well, this console is the fucking poster child of convergence. This is
I mean, look at that. It's the fucking Switch.
This is the symptom of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all the same. What's it matter?
Right.
What's it matter?
Yeah, what's it matter? Who cares? Whatever. Why can't this thing not look like the Switch? Couldn't they make a handheld thing that had their own like style to it?
You know, I think it looks different in some key ways.
I know you're going to be, well, it doesn't have Joy-Cons on the side or blah, 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 blah.
No.
I wasn't yelling at you. I was like yelling at people who were going to watch the fucking video.
Big protest of the Switch. It is a rectangle. It's not ergonomic. It's for people with tiny hands. Mm-hmm. I don't have big hands, but I have average hands. Switch is sometimes too small. This thing looks like it's got these chonky grips.
Yeah.
It's got the back buttons if you're elite shooter gamer.
Like hopefully this is made for an adult and not a child.
Yeah, that
would be good, because I feel like their audience probably is more older. So I mean, that's one of my problems with the Switch. But I don't fucking want to go into that. I also
hope it doesn't have a loud ass fan.
I'm looking at it right now. Where's the D-pad? There's no D-pad.
It's a D-pad. It's on the left. So when it cycles around, you'll see it. Yeah. Yeah, just for people watching, we have a screen over here where in the episodes.
It's up there. Now I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
See, that looks like a real D-pad. It's not buttons like on the Switch, which I don't like at all.
Yeah.
How did Nintendo's the one who like basically made the D-pad? And I know there's going to be one guy who's going to be like, well, there was actually one before it or whatever. I know, but like they popularized and basically made the good D-pad. And I think it was like in television or something had a controller that had a fucking like D-pad on it actually first, but it's like it's different though. Why is their main console have button? Like, why isn't it a real D-pad? Also, so I went through this whole thing with controllers for the Switch. I've tried every fucking controller for the Nintendo Switch, painstakingly trying to find a controller I don't have a problem with, because I don't like the Joy-Cons. There's one version that's pretty good. It's one of the versions of the Switch Pro controller, because there's different ones, that's pretty good. But then I went out and I bought myself the Super Nintendo official Super Nintendo Switch controller that you can't even buy right now. Maybe they'll have it available at some point. I went on eBay and I bought it because you can't even get it.
Right.
It's like $100-something. I get the controller. It's awesome, and it's the only thing I use. And I'm not saying that necessarily because it's a Super Nintendo controller, because it could easily be a piece of shit. A lot of those that you get, like it'd be like a PC Super Nintendo controller, a lot of those are like junky. They did a really good job. It's like really quality, and the D-pad on that and the way that controller is better than any Pro controller that I've used. I've become super anal about controllers because of the amount of time that I play these games, and I can tell the difference in a second, like if it sucks or not. And it's a shame that Nintendo, the company that made the D-pad, isn't still, like, how can they be getting it so wrong? They've made it buttons. Why is it buttons? This looks better to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this one's even good, because some D-pads are shittier than other D-pads.
I hate when they feel like you touch the up and it feels like it's like stiff, like you can't lean into the it feels like
it's like
teetering, like it feels like it's on like a lever when you press down. That feeling like ruins it for me.
I think it's not only just about whether or not it's cheap or not, but it's also about like just if they designed it well or not. It's like both. It's like, will the company design it right? And will they put in the money to get the quality materials? I can tell you a D-pad, besides, the old school ones, that is really good. As far as modern controllers, the Xbox One Elite Series 2. Yeah. Really good. But the controller's like $200. And you shouldn't have to spend hundreds of dollars to get a good D-pad.
I remember.
Like, why is it so hard?
I remember starting with like Xbox 360. I started really feeling the price of controllers, because they had the wireless and all the stuff in them. Because you used to buy controllers. Maybe Dreamcast, they were kind of pricey too. But when you originally bought a system like a Genesis or a Super Nintendo, you needed a controller, $20, $30 maybe. You're in your new controller. Now controllers $60, $70, $200. It's like, whoa, man. And in my house,
it's like for like Switch, there's also like the Smash Brothers controllers and all that, and it's like, wow, you go to the store and it's like they're like $80, $90 for a controller. It's like, whoa, that's so expensive for a controller.
In my house, we were playing Mario Golf. We're still playing Mario Golf.
Yeah,
and my son hands me the left Joy-Con, and he's like, "Dad, we're gonna play Mario Golf. You get the left Joy-Con." And I'm like, this is my house. Where's my Pro controller?
Yeah.
You're right.
Now, listen, if I was a kid and I was growing up now, like, I'd probably be I'd have smaller hands for one thing. Yeah. And I'd probably be more receptive to the Joy-Cons. And I get it. It's like it's a console largely for kids. So it's probably fine for that. But as an adult who's going to play, like, whatever, fucking Mech Warrior 5, I'm looking at these Joy-Cons and I'm like,
Hold on. So this is a PC gaming device.
Yeah.
Could you imagine playing Mech Warrior 5 on this thing?
No.
It's got the 4 buttons on the back. They thought about it. It's got 4 buttons on the back. It's got 6 buttons on the front, or 8 buttons on the front. It's got 4 triggers. So it's got 14 buttons on this thing.
Dude, motherfuckers set up cockpits in their house. They have like they have the fucking like we talked about this before, the Thrustmaster and the fucking switches and whatever, and they have literally the U.S. military grade controllers that are thousands of dollars, and they're sitting there and they have their giant fucking screens and their like headsets, and they're like in this thing, and then you're telling me they're gonna play out of that? They're gonna look at that and laugh out loud.
Right.
Laugh out loud. They'll have a hearty belly laugh over this.
And that's why it has a dock and USB port so you can plug all your shit in.
So, like for a game like Hades, you can probably like it's a good thing for certain things. So, like I would buy this for sure, and I would use it for certain games, and then there would be other games that I wouldn't be on the plane playing Mech Warrior. So I'm not saying that this would be a piece of shit.
SimCity.
You would just have to be smart about the games that you're choosing to play on this thing.
Yeah. I have a question. Imagine you're sitting on a plane, okay, and you're gonna play SimCity.
Yeah.
Would you hold this fucking thing with one hand like this, plug a mouse into it, and be playing SimCity?
Well, like SimCity, like. Well, I don't know which version you're talking about, but you're not talking about the Super Nintendo version, because you play that with a D-pad.
I'm talking about like
a PC version.
Yeah, City Skylines.
Well, right.
Are you sitting there with
I played that.
Are you sitting there with the mouse plugged into it like this?
No, on a plane.
On a plane?
Right, yeah, no.
And the fan's going because you're playing a 3D game.
Fucking like Age of Empires 2
yeah,
on
you're
this
playing
fucking
Age
thing.
of Empires with the fucking mouse plugged into it.
Like it's never. This is for like you could play like platformers, and like there's a lot of like, indie games, and I mean I can think of a lot of games that would be good for this.
I got some games that I could think of. You could play with
Iron
this
Meat.
You could play.
Angry Video Game Nerd Deluxe.
Angry Video Game Nerd 1 and 2
Available
Deluxe.
now.
Eagle Island Twist. Those are some love 1, 2, and 3.
And those are the only games I can think of.
Those are the only games that came to mind. I just don't.
Anyway, so I will probably own one of these, and I will probably only use it when I'm on a plane.
Cool.
That's all I can really say.
Oh, but hold on.
I wish I had more to fucking say about these fucking things, but it's like I'm not, dude, motherfucker, dude. If I have a giant fucking television here, why am I sitting here like this? I don't leave the house. I don't go anywhere. I don't, Brian. What I'm trying to tell you is I don't have a life.
Yeah.
I sit at home and I stream my fucking games. Unless you're on, like you're a dude and you're going on a bus every day, or I don't know what people do I see these fucking Nintendo commercials, and then the guys like playing fucking basketball, and then they're like playing fucking Switch on the basketball court. Please use a clip from that commercial. It's when the Switch came out. Who's doing that?
I'll tell you, Mike. I play this. I play it when I go to the court. I play it when I'm pumping iron in the gym. I play it when I go to rooftop parties in Brooklyn. I play it when I'm at the bar.
Yeah, and you got your like beard and your fucking
I play it when I drink a Pabst Blue Ribbon. I hang out with the guys.
You got a fucking plaid shirt, and you got like a sleeve, and your fucking little glasses.
Yeah,
and you're gonna go to the brewery.
I played at the brewery,
and then
with the boys.
Fuck me.
Can you vape while playing it?
You fucking vape.
I vape. I played at the vape shop. I played at the marijuana dispensary. I play it when I'm at district court, paying my fines. I pay it when I visit my probation officer. Stuff like that. Playing in the back of the courtroom in my alimony hearing.
Fucking shit.
I don't know.
So
I'm a gamer through and through, Mike.
Yeah. So that's the Steam Deck.
That's what you get. Yeah. So what are we looking at today?
I forget where we're going from there. So Proteus.
Yeah. Okay. So you were playing Proteus.
I have no. I want to let everybody know I have no segue from the Steam Deck to Proteus, other than I was playing it on Steam. How about that?
That's good. Wow, we did it.
There you go. That's the best I got. So Proteus. I've been playing that recently. That's the game I brought for today to talk about. Listen. It's a Doom clone. I saw it, some clips of it on YouTube, and I was like, that looks cool. I'll try it.
It looks more like a Quake clone.
It looks more like Quake than Doom. I tried it, and I try all kinds of games that are like that, like Doom clones and stuff like that. But this one I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was like super high quality, super well done. But it is true. You go through it, and enemy by enemy, you're like, that guy's the imp. He's not the imp, but he's the imp. That guy over there, that thing coming towards me, that's a lost souls. This coming toward, that's a baron of hell. It's not, but it is. So the whole game is basically like that. So when I was playing through it, I was like, oh, this is a demon. This is this. This is this. Like, there's always like the equivalent. But what makes this game good is how good the weapons are, how good the controls are, how good the level design is, how good the graphics are, the music. And I feel like a lot of times these days with music in a lot of these modern games, or at least it had been in the last, I'd say like 10 years or something, you play the games and the music is always very atmospheric. And
right.
a lot of times I get bored with that because I want like a soundtrack, a tune to remember. And with a lot of the first person shooters now, they do this thing where you're walking around and there's nothing going on, so there's no music.
You hear like water dripping.
You hear drip, drip. It's like the blood at the end of Mega Man 2. It's like bloop, bloop, and you're walking around and it's like nothing, and you're just like, and it's just like it gets boring. And then some enemies come in, and then and the music starts, and it builds up, and then now it's going crazy and all that. So that's like the way, like, and I think they felt like that was the most brilliant idea ever, but it gets fucking boring when there's no music at all.
You know what I think it is? I think gaming right now is like taught in schools, right?
Right.
And 3D positional audio is like built into all the tool sets because that's like what the AAA games do, where it's like, oh, there's a motor running over here in the level. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have a motor sound, and when you walk near the motor sound, it's gonna be louder. But now I walk away and it gets less loud, and that's the way they teach it.
You gotta remember though, like it's a video game. At a certain point, it's a video game, and you have to think of the user, the person who's playing its experience. And I want to have fun playing the game. I don't want to be bored out of my mind. Like I feel like I'm sitting in a fucking garage or something, and there's no fucking music. It's like, have some music. So this game, I feel like did it right for me. Because people are going to yell at me, and I like when they do it. I'm talking about this is our show.
This is him.
This is my perspective, my fucking perspective. Fuck. So when there's nothing going on, there's music.
Wow.
And it's nice. It would be like that would be like the old school Doom games. Yeah. There's music, and it's good music. But also though, I have to say this. Then when the action builds up, there's more music, and it's more exciting music, and I feel like that's a better way to do it, because now I'm not walking around doing nothing. The parts where you're just collecting things, you're not fighting anything, that part's still like, it's keeping me going, and then more enemies come in, and it's like really exciting. That was the way to do it. So I was very impressed by how they did the music.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I was thinking about that. One of the things that I was thinking about for Iron Meat, I know I brought it up before, but is we wanted to do an endless mode. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I wanted to have like a wanted level system where as you have to kill the bosses faster and faster and faster. And every time a boss spawns, you get a wanted meter to go up. And when that meter goes up, like the threat meter or something, I wanted to have the composers compose the music so that it's in multiple layers. So
wanted meaning that like more enemies would come after you because now you're wanted. So that's kind of like Grand Theft Auto with the stars.
But what it's going to be more is like a threat meter. Like the meat is more contagious. It's more getting in. And the way I wanted the music composed was that there'd be separate measures, and the wanted meter would only go up on a musical transition. Mm-hmm. So you would meet the requirements to be for the threat meter to go up, but the music would wait until there was a cue, and then it would be faster and harder.
That's cool.
And then you'd go up to the next one, it'd be faster and harder until you get to like level 5, where it's like fast and hard and metal and like crazy.
I love it fast and hard.
Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah.
So the point is that I thought about how music could be a cue to how much you were in danger, and how the way the music changes, you wouldn't even have to look, because it's a shooter. You're shooting, you're fighting. Yeah. You wouldn't even have to look at the meter.
You just know it's getting more intense by the music.
You would know purely by the musical score.
Right.
And then
That's cool.
And then every section, every level in the game would have 5 tracks. It would have, threat level 1, threat level 2,
like
level
a different
3.
a different soundtrack for each threat level.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's
right?
cool.
But there'd always be music, like you were saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't think I've seen a game do that that I can think of. So there was that. But moving beyond that, another thing I want to talk about is the color in the game and the fact that there is a lot of color. So many games, and especially if you go back to I got to be careful about how I say this, but in the PlayStation 2 era, not all the games, because there's Gradius 5 that I played that has beautiful color, and that's a PlayStation 2 game. There's a lot of games that had beautiful color, but there was a lot of games in that era that were very muddy and dark and gray, and I feel like there was a plague going on back then of games with sort of muddy, and N64 would be like that too quite a bit. There would be a lot of games like that. But then of course there's Mario, which is very colorful. So there's whatever. And a lot of games I played after that, I feel like that's when the problems with that started, and then it went on for a long time. I play a lot of PC games, and or games on consoles, and everything was just so dark and everything's just in shadows, because I feel like I don't know what developers were necessarily going for, but everything just is brown or gray and depressing. And I want it to be more uplifting or fun, because it's a fucking video game. And with the old Doom games, the original Doom and Doom 2 has a lot of color. Yeah. This game has a lot of color, and the way they do it is fantastic. So when an enemy's coming at you, it's like the imp enemy, you blow him away and he blows up into red blood, and the blood effects look great too. But then there's some other thing that comes at you, whatever it is, some other monster. You blow him away, but when he blows up into blue goo or something. Yeah. And then you shoot the motherfucking flying things and they come at you and they blow up yellow or something. So by the time you see all the blood splattered on the ground, it's splattered, and it almost looks like Splatoon, except I find Splatoon to be very Nickelodeon colors if they were even uglier. Right. Where this game is nice coloring, they had an artist that made it look really nice, and you just look around everywhere and you're you have this giant green machine that's glowing. It looks like the on the Enterprise the engine, right? It's just glowing, but then you turn 1 inch over here and then you have this big fucking red fire stuff coming, and everywhere you look, it's just the most beautiful colored game. And I was like, this is what I wanted for such a long time. Instead of you play these Doom clones and everything, you're in a hallway. And you go down the hallway and everything's gray, and just it's a beautiful looking game. So
I want to talk a little bit about the historical precedent for that in the Doom and Quake franchises. So Doom, it's pixelated, it's one type of 3D. Then you got the Quake, and Quake really brought 3D like we have today into gaming. But Quake 2 was the game where I think 3D started really getting its stride. And that game is actually very colorful compared to the very brown and gray Quake that came before it. And that's because that was the beginning of hardware transforming lighting and colored lighting. So Quake 2 has hardware accelerated colored lighting. And they use the colored lighting all over the game. And it's a big deal. They really focus on the fact that they have colored lighting, because that was a back of the box feature. Yeah, for the game.
I feel like they did that too in the Doom 64. They were doing that a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that they had that made that game much more colorful than it otherwise would have been, and it sounds like this game is way over and above those older games.
The other thing about it too is it's not. You mentioning the pixels and sprites and whatnot. It's when you look at the monsters coming out and the blood and everything. I might be wrong about this, but I feel like everything is a voxel. It's almost voxels, the kind of way. I want to say, what was the name of that game? That launch game for PlayStation 4. It's a shmup. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
You ever play Ace of Spades?
The Ace of Spades. I remember hearing that song over and over, and Tony Hawk, and just wanting to pull my hair out.
Yeah.
No, I haven't
that
played
game
Ace
is
of Spades.
voxel based, and
Okay.
it's Minecraft looking now.
Yeah, but this is like I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just got its own sort of unique look to it, and it's beautiful looking. But I'm going to talk about another thing that I like about it before I want to get into something that I don't like about the game. The most fun part of the game, though, because that's what these fucking games are about, is like how much fun, as good as the music is, and as good as the graphics are, and all that. The most important thing is gameplay, always, and I always say that. So it's a Doom style game. They get all that right. That's all perfect. But they add something in that is even cooler. They have these challenges where they'll give you like a specific weapon, and you gotta like rush through levels, almost like, you know, when you play Mario Maker, and it's like you gotta, you know, it's like a quick thing. You gotta get it from beginning to end real quick, like a speed run type of thing or something. They have these different challenges where you are in a Doom style level, but they give you, let's say, the rocket launcher, and then you have to make it from the beginning to the end in the fastest time that you can, so that you get like you do it as fast as you can. But they say if you make it in under a minute, you get whatever you get 5 stars or whatever the fuck it is. But you try to do it, and as you're going through, they have like targets and shit, so you're blowing up targets as you're doing it. And it'd be like you hit the target, and then a thing happens. It's almost like a Wile E. Coyote, like Looney Tunes thing, where you hit a thing, and then like a big stalactite or whatever comes down from the ceiling, and then crushes a bunch of enemies that are, because there's enemies that you're fighting as well, and you're constantly like shooting these targets while things are happening in front of you, and you're trying to do this as fast as possible, and it is so much fun to do. I want them to like. This is an early access game,
right,
and they're still adding stuff to it. I got to the end of the early access, and I did all the content that there was to do. When they add more shit into this, I want them to do is add more of the challenge stuff, because that was by far, like, it's fun to play through the Doom levels. It's like the regular campaign, but at a certain point, it's just the same. You're getting the key cards, and it's just the same thing you've always done. The fucking challenge shit is like way more fun than the actual game to me.
I'll tell you, when the original Doom, was it Doom 2016, right?
Yes.
When that came out, all the challenges that were in that, and in Doom Eternal after that, I love that. I loved like the retro levels too, like all of those like side challenges where it's like, oh, you got to kill this many like revenants in this much time and stuff like that. Yeah, I love that. I love having objectives, and you know, it being like more arcadey like that. That's kind of cool.
I have one more thing to talk about, and then we'll get into your game. So with this, there's something about it that bothered me, though. So the way they do the checkpoints in this game is, I found myself turning this game into what it's not supposed to be. Okay. In normal Doom or Quake or whatever, you play the game and you go through the level, and if you try to make it to the end, and if you die, you start over, and all the enemies come back. And and you try to do it unless you're saving like as you go. But if you're trying to play the game normally, you're shooting the enemies, you're trying to make it to the exit. Oh shit, I died. Start at the beginning. Try again. But now you'll probably do better, because now you've done it. You know what you're doing a little better. Yeah. This is not like that. This is, you get to a certain point, and there's like an orb, and it's like a checkpoint orb. You hit the checkpoint. If you die, you'll start at the checkpoint, but all the enemies that you killed already stay dead. Okay. So it makes the game way easier. Yeah. So I didn't like that, because I found myself the first like a couple of hours I was playing it, I just was doing that because I didn't realize how the game functioned, really. And I'm like playing it, and I'm just going through the game, and I find myself getting through the game really, really fast, and I was like, wait a second, this is going too fast, and I feel like I'm not being challenged at all, and it started to get boring, because I'm like, this is too easy. Like I was dying, I was getting killed, but then all the enemies were gone. I was like, what is going on here? This is, I should go back and have to fight those and make my way through. Right. Like that's where you get the sense of accomplishment from, and that wasn't there. And I was like, wait, this is a problem. So I tried to fix the game for myself. I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll restart every time. So if I die, instead of starting at the checkpoint, they give you the option to restart the level from the beginning. Yeah. So now I'm like, I'm going to restart. So I purposely and this is not the way you're supposed to play the game. I restarted, and I start from the beginning every time. But because the game is not intended really to be played that way. They want you to just go through it and get to the checkpoints and go through it. Mm-hmm. I had an extremely hard time trying to play the game that way because it's not designed that way. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't really even fix the game for myself by doing that. So my problem with the game, that was my problem with the game, is it's like I need that sense of accomplishment and it wasn't there. And I think that was a major flaw of the game. It's like not meant to be played that way.
Well, it sounds like what they need is difficulties, but the difficulties need to be more than just changing the enemy makeup. It needs to be built so that the level can be played on a harder mode where you play all the way through,
and it's not
in the checkpoint mode, and it's not.
It's built to be played with the checkpoints with the enemies not respawning because I feel like they're trying to.
They want to make it accessible.
They want to make it accessible, and I wasn't into that.
Like, we had that problem with Eagle Island. When people played it, they thought it was this cutesy owl game, and then it was fucking punishingly hard.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know what? I'm going to return it. It's too hard.
Well, I felt the opposite about this. I almost was like, oh, I'll return this because it's not
right.
Hard. There's no challenge.
But that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that, people are going to pick it up. They're going to be like, fuck this. It's too hard. I'm just going to return it.
Well, okay. So the solution to this is you have both.
Yes.
You have two modes. You have one mode that's accessible for people that want it that way, and you have one mode you could call old school mode, and you could call a modern mode or whatever. But it's becoming a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you solve it. Make everybody happy. Make two modes. But yeah, so that was my problem with the game.
Yeah, I play a lot of retro platformers and things like that, and it seems like we're falling into two camps right now, and no one is really taking the middle road.
Sure.
Like, there's games I pick up where I'm like, 95% of people on Earth, this game's gonna kick their ass. Right? It has precision platforming. It's NES hard. You go back to the beginning. And then there's other games I play.
Well, I was playing Iron Meat, and I hadn't played it really, and I played it, and I was dying a bunch, but I was like, that's fine because I'm going to play it again, and then I'm going to play it again, and then I'm going to play it again, and I'm going to gradually get better. And it's like when I play fucking Contra Hardcore. It's like, yeah, the first time I play it, I'm going to die a bunch on level 1, but I know that after I play this game for 6 hours, I'm going to fucking no-death this.
But you notice on the Iron Meat, we set the default difficulty to normal. Mm-hmm. Normal is Contra code rules where you have 30 lives.
Sure.
If you go down to easy, you just have infinite lives.
Infinite, right.
If you go up to hard, you start with 3. Mm-hmm. And we have where you get the points, it'll go da-da-da-da and give you more lives, just like Contra does.
And I think that's totally fine, because then you can say this. You can say, oh, I beat Iron Meat on normal, or I beat Iron Meat on nightmare mode, or whatever the most difficult thing is, and that's what you can say. That is how you fix all the problems with all these games, with Proteus or any other game that we might talk about that might have this problem. Just make different modes. It's such an easy thing to fix. And even go back to retro games, I used to see that problem. I used to be like, oh man, too bad this game doesn't have a hard mode, or too bad this game's too hard. Too bad, like Battletoads. I feel like that's a game that probably should have had an easy mode, because a lot of people didn't like it because it was too hard. Some people love it because it's hard, but maybe there should have been 2 modes for that.
One of the things I hated about a lot of those games that did have multiple difficulties on NES or whatever is you played on easy and you get to level 3 of 7 or whatever, and it'd be like, well, you got to the end of the easy mode.
And you don't get to
play the game. And sometimes you might want to play the game on easy mode, but play through it.
A famous example of that is Castlevania 64, where if you play the game on easy, you only go halfway through the game or something, and then it's not until that point that they tell you, that's all you get to play. Now play on normal. But they don't tell you that when you start it.
No.
So you get to that point and you're like, wait, what? I have to start the whole game over, and you're like, fuck this game.
Yeah.
And fuck that game anyway.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Castlevania 64.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I love the first level of that game.
I played that game as a kid, and I'm like, Symphony of the Night's way better than this.
Oh, absolutely.
But now I was having a conversation recently with somebody who, wasn't alive when it came out, and they're like, oh no, that's a classic. I'm like, Really?
Sit down and play it? Have they played it?
I'm like, really?
Yeah, that's what I find with a lot of people is like, oh, it's a classic. I would be like, and then, but you have to. This is what you do. You have to inquire further. Oh yeah, when was the last time you actually played through? Well, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, I bought that day one, hour one, in line at the electronics boutique. Can I have the Castlevania, please, sir?
I just did. Oh man, the electronics boutique. I love the electronics boutique, but that'll be another video.
Right.
But this video is not about Castlevania 64. There are some positive things about that game. I think that I like the skeletons on the motorcycles and stuff, and there's some cool things in there. But anyway,
so I played a game. This was a early release from Inti Creates. I played Blaster Master 03.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of things.
I didn't even know they made a second one.
Well, they did. Yeah. And I feel like the original, I guess I'll talk about the original Blaster Master 0 first. The Blaster Master is a game for NES and PlayStation and Game Boy and other consoles probably that I felt was deeply flawed. Mm-hmm. The original Blaster Master has like one of the coolest freaking concepts. It is, you are in a tank that can...
It's super cool.
...jump and platform and can aim in different directions, and you can get out.
Yeah.
You can get out and you can
Which was revolutionary.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And, a lot of games struggled to have one character move on the NES, but the original Blaster Master had two. Then you go into dungeons, and the dungeons are top down, and you're going around and shooting, and you have a little pea shooter. It's great.
It's a controversial game because it reminds me of it's a little of like a Zelda 2 situation where it's like it's a really good concept. It is a good game, but it just has so many problems. It's sort of like when we would play Crystalis. Mm-hmm. It's like it's a really good game, but then it's plagued with all these problems. And I had played through about half of the original Blaster Master, and it's a game like I want to love, and I know that there's people out there. I know there's people that are going to listen to this, and they, if you're a person and you love the original Blaster Master, that's fine, because I had that same experience with a lot of NES games. Like, I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I wouldn't argue with anybody at any point that it's not a crappy game. It is a crappy game, but I still like it. So it's okay. It's okay, but I always find myself getting like really lost with Blaster Master, and it just has so many problems, and it could be such a good game. So what I want to know about this modern one is, do they fix those problems?
Well, hold on. Yes, I'll go into it. My problems with the original Blaster Master: consumables are brutal. The consumables of the game where you get the hover energy, you get the things. There's no mini map, so you can't go. It's hard to know.
I think it needed that.
It's hard to know where the hell to go. The outside of the car is a little limited. I
felt like it was even worse than with the original Metroid, because people complain about the original Metroid not having a map. If you want to talk about a game that needed a map even more, Blaster Master really needed it.
Oh yeah. So Blaster Master was a cool game. I have fond memories of it, but it had a lot of flaws. Mm-hmm. So Blaster Master 0 comes out. Inti Creates puts it out. It's practically a Switch launch title. Mm-hmm. So it came out. I remember that, right. It was one of the first games to come out on the Switch. Although it didn't come out the same day, but it was very early on.
Sure, early.
It was awesome. Solved a lot of the same problems. A lot of the problems that you had with the consumables and it being really hard and not being able to save and not having a map and not having all that. Did it all.
That's great.
I played through that whole game. One of the first games I played on my Switch. Loved it. It was great. They introduced like this very anime, very Japan story, and this game has the same thing.
Which is fine. I think that's totally fitting.
But it fits what it is.
Yeah,
because it's a game from Japan.
Yeah,
so that's what it is. But you get to the end of that, and you're like, wow, that was a solid Blaster Master experience. They fixed it. They made it great.
Right.
Here you go. Get the Blaster Master 02. It's a solid Blaster Master experience, but it's not much different. You get to Blaster Master 03 now, the game that I played. Mm-hmm. It's the same shit again.
Right.
At that point, you need to be a huge fan
Of that
of this
type.
because
Yeah.
there's all of these platformers and all of these retro inspired games and all this stuff you could play, and you're giving me more Blaster Master.
So it's kind of like it's worth playing the first one, but by the time you get to the third one, you're like, all right.
But it's all about sequels. Like, sequels can't stay the same. Mm-hmm. Mega Man X. You probably play Mega Man X every now and then. Which one do you play? If
The first Mega Man
you
X.
play the first one, maybe the second one. By the time you get to the
I
third
beat
one,
the second one once, and the third one I played a little bit of. But if I ever want to go to Mega Man X, I go to the Mega Man X.
you
the
go to
first
Mega
one.
Man X, right?
Yeah.
Because
Chill Penguin.
Chill Penguin, Spark Mandrill, it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
Freaking
yep.
Chameleon Dude.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't even play
Armored Armadillo.
Armored Armadillo.
See, we remember off the top
All
of our
the
heads.
shit. I can tell you the name of one boss in Blaster Master Zero 2 or 3 for that matter.
Yeah.
And I struggle with it because the execution is better. The execution continued to get better. The character,
So you think Blaster Master 03 is better than the first, or no? Not the NES game, but the first.
I mean, they're all about the same.
Okay.
It's a little more polished in different areas, but the one thing they did improve, I will say, with Blaster Master Zero 3 is the player character when he's in the top-down levels has more different kinds of guns and more different kinds of power-ups, and it seems like it's more a full part of the game than the earlier incarnations,
Yeah.
where it's more just like Sophia, the vehicle, has all the powers, and he's just, that's just part of it. It's just thrown in for shits and giggles. Another thing this game does...
It looks really nice. I mean, I haven't played the game myself, but I can say I like how it looks.
Yeah, it has the pixel art's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really good pixel art. But being able to change between the different weapons and have the different weapons affect enemies differently and involve the puzzles and stuff is really the core of that type of gameplay. But, the game really left me wanting more. I mean, it's very competent, it's good, but it definitely left me wanting more because the sequels were just more of the same.
Right.
And that made me think back to...
So at that point, do you just feel like, well, now I just want to go play a totally different game?
Kind of.
Like, I'm going to go play the Satisfactory.
Satisfactory, right? Or anything, yeah.
Which that's the problem, because if you're making the third game, it's now, because now I ask myself, well, what about if they're going to do a fourth game or a fifth game or sixth game? It's like, what's the reason to keep playing these Blaster Master games? How do you keep this franchise viable and interesting?
I hate to say it, but at this point, I have enough Blaster Master for the rest of my life.
Right.
I assume that I'm going to want to go play Blaster Master.
Unless somebody comes in and revolutionizes it.
Yes.
Yeah, which probably needs to happen at this point.
The next one needs to break the formula.
Yeah.
Think about many examples of the NES era. If you look at
The best example is Zelda 2.
Zelda 2, right?
And I know there's still to this day people that will shit on it, but Zelda 2 is just as good, if not better, than Zelda 1. Zelda 2 is an amazing game. There's people that speedrun the shit out of Zelda 2 all the time. It is a fucking phenomenal game. But because it broke that formula of that top-down classic,
Right.
which you'll never beat that.
Yeah.
That's like the Link to the Past. That's the gold standard of what Zelda is. But Nintendo really did it twice with that. They brought you another gold standard, but people rejected it because it wasn't the same, because people expect the same. So this gives you the same, but this is now, we're in 2021 now.
Yeah.
We've had there's lessons that we should have learned by now.
Exactly.
So
It's safe. It's too safe.
Yes.
It's too safe. And you know what's funny? Nintendo learned that lesson. They learned that lesson. You look at Super Mario Brothers, and then you look at Mario 2. It was different in America.
That funny how they figured that out in 1988? That's how fucking ahead of the time they were.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And people are still trying to play catch up with that. And Nintendo's so far out to the next thing. Listen, I know I always like shit on Nintendo Switch. Like,
Right.
I shit on the physical thing, the Joy-Cons, the system itself, the dock and stuff like that. That's what I have a problem with. But the Switch, the games on the library of the Switch is amazing.
Yeah.
They have so much good stuff on there. And like all the fucking things Nintendo's been dropping, I've been so impressed with Nintendo lately. Their E3 presentation I thought was great. They had a lot of really cool things that they dropped. But then they had some fucking power moves lately. They're like, oh yeah, E3's over. By the way, it's been about 3 weeks later. Now the Switch OLED, we're just going to drop that on you. Oh, by the way, and yesterday they fucking just dropped like the new fucking Pokemon game. They just like all these fucking power moves. It's not even E3.
Well,
they didn't even mention that shit.
You know what I think it comes from now?
Yeah.
The other guys, PlayStation, Xbox, they're so caught up in the supply chains for these new chips and the hardware and they're making a game where the textures and the video, everything costs so much money. Mm-hmm. There's no room for experimentation because they're betting the farm on every title.
Yeah.
You look at like Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and you look at those fucking textures and
it's amazing.
Voice acting. It's unbelievable. But that has to be the game they make.
But that's basically the same game that we had for PlayStation 2.
Right.
Basically. I mean, it's better, but it's,
But when you're spending that money
it's a safe bet.
It's a safe bet. Nintendo games.
How long can they bank on these safe bets until people start to get bored, though?
Right. Well, you know what happens? You're on your safe bets. You're on Assassin's Creed 57 and you're on Spider-Man 7 and you're on all of that.
At some point, people are going to be like, we played this.
But then a small team comes along and makes Fortnite and Fall Guys and Among Us and blows you out of the water.
Fall Guys might not be the best example at this point.
For half the...
Right.
For half the money. Like,
right, sure.
They blow you out of the water. Or... Nintendo's like, oh, we're gonna come out with a fucking golf game, and it's gonna be a great golf game, and now that game cost them nothing to make, versus they used textures and shit from Odyssey.
Nintendo's in a really special position because they have these things that are built into people's brains the same way like Mickey Mouse is built into your brain or Aladdin and things like that, where it's just these things that people just like love. And Nintendo has Mario and Zelda and Metroid and all these different franchises that they can probably go forever with that stuff, and people will love it forever, no matter what. My
2-year-old is getting dressed in the morning, and we're like, okay, what clothes are you gonna wear? And he goes over, and he has like so much clothes from his brother and all of that, like hand-me-downs and stuff, like piles.
Yeah.
So he's like, Pikachu. He's 2 years old. I'm like, fucking Pikachu? When did you have time to learn who Pikachu was? I never told you who Pikachu was.
They know.
But he knows.
Yeah.
Like, Pikachu's, like, built in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, man.
I almost wonder, it's so successful and so good. It's like, how do you... If you wanted to, how do you even... make it unsuccessful? Even if Nintendo actively worked on it, how could they make Mario not successful?
Right.
I don't think you even can.
Do you think
it's fucking unstoppable?
You think Mario and Pokemon and stuff too big to fail?
I think that given enough time passage,
right?
And if they fucked up this, if they made enough missteps over 20 years, sure. But in the short term, I think it's too big to fail.
My message to Inti Creates for this game is, from this game to Bloodstained to Gunvolt to all the games they make, it's time for something new. You've shown that you're competent. You make good games.
But this is like Blaster Master. It's like an NES era game. It's like I want to see what they can come up with.
Yeah, let's see a new thing.
That's not just to them. It's like anybody who's come, sort of remaking these old franchises. Like, this is cool. Everybody likes Blaster Master, but all right, something new now.
Yeah,
something new.
We are ready.
We're ready and willing.
We're ready.
And I got my wallet open and ready, and I'll try it. I'll buy it and I'll try it.
Absolutely.
Just make it good though, and make it interesting and new.
Yeah, and I need pixel games. It could be a pixel game. They don't need to make 3D Mega whatever. Just make it different.
Exactly.
Make it cool. Take what you learned here and make something good, and we'll play it.
We've been going for 30 years or whatever on these pixel games, and is it unlimited, the amount of things that you can do with these type of games? Like, I mean, maybe it is. I guess it's just how creative can you be? Because I see so many of these indie games. It's like, oh, here's the blocks from Mega Man, the disappearing blocks, and here's you light something on fire and a door opens. It's like, I've seen all this shit before. It's like, if I'm gonna play a game like this, it needs to do something very new.
Like,
And I gotta say another thing. And like, I talk about this on fucking stream all the time, but this is a podcast and we're allowed to like go off fucking topic a little bit, right? So I look at this and all these games that are on the Nintendo Switch, or even a lot of them that are on Steam, the modern retro games that look like this, that have this pixel style, I can tell when I look at this is a modern game, because I know back then with they're trying to replicate that 8-bit, 16-bit era, right. But I know that this is like on fucking Switch or Steam. It's not indecipherable from an NES game, and I want to see somebody come along and make a game where I can't tell the difference. Like, I'm like, oh, that might have been on NES. Trick me. I want to be tricked and believe that it could have actually been a real old game, because they're trying to bring back those feelings of like, oh, remember the 16-bit era? Yeah, but this is a Switch game, and I can tell any fucking second of the day that this is a Switch game. That shit that's doing right there probably can't happen.
No, the gun that he's looking at right now is using a pixel shader.
Yeah.
To do the glowing, the flashing effects. And the way it makes the character flash and all of that. This is very modern. By the way, I want to mention the enemy I'm fighting right here. I'm actually talking to Paul when this happens. I noticed that if you stand still, he'll never hit you.
Oh, okay.
Right?
That's a good little trick.
Look at that.
That's probably the trick that you figured out the trick without even playing it.
You stand still, he'll never hit you.
Yeah.
Right?
If this game was on NES, you'd be dead.
Yeah. Right? But I'm looking at that and I'm like, because he's a very challenging pattern.
Sure.
He's like teleporting around. It's like, no, you just use the electric gun and stand still.
Just stand still. And
you just stand still.
Right.
Right? But that's the kind of thing that you need to have played these games for 30 years to be like,
to tell.
Sure. Which we have.
So with me, I'm in a place where I'm lucky enough that I got my, Sony Trinitron and I got my original systems, and not everybody has that, but because I'm in the position to have that, and a lot of the people that listen to this are going to be retro gamers too, that have that type of equipment. I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this podcast also have a PVM or whatever, and are playing the games kind of or on a CRT or something, and playing the games where they're displayed more properly. I'm at a point now where the real retro games that actually came out in the 80s and 90s look so much better than these games on those televisions. I look at stuff like this now, and it's a little bit of a distaste in my mouth.
Really? You think because I think this is a pretty good looking pixel game.
I'm not saying that it's not.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful looking game, but it doesn't look as good as playing a real retro game like on a CRT.
I see.
I think this game is beautiful. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do see what you mean.
It can't compare to that, though.
Right.
So I find myself being like, well, I'm going to go play my games on my CRT because this stuff can't ever compare. But this goes into like a whole bigger discussion of now the problem is I'm going beyond a discussion of video games. I'm talking about televisions now.
Right.
And like these companies like Indie Crates or whatever, any of these companies that are designing these retro games, they're just designing a game to put on the Switch or on the PlayStation or whatever. But I'm talking about like changing the thing you're looking at it on, and there's nothing they can do about that. So
I think we're about to see a change similar to the change we saw when we went from CRTs to LCDs.
Yeah.
The monitor on this laptop is an OLED, like the new Switch is. And what's interesting about OLED monitors is they have true blacks. So an LCD will the black will still be lit by the backlights.
Right.
Right? On an LCD TV. With an OLED TV, it's actually the elements that glow. So when the screen turns off, it's off. It's much like when you were a kid and it was late at night and you were watching late night TV and the screen goes black.
Yeah.
And it's black because the electron gun isn't hitting it. Right? But more so. On an OLED.
So it's going to look better.
Yeah. And so the other thing we're dealing with is we're dealing with the HDR revolution right now, where now you have this high dynamic range where the brightest light that the TV can make is bright enough that it's like a flashlight. And the darkest dark that it can make is pitch black.
And it's like I'm like not at the I don't have a monitor like that with the OLED yet, and I don't even know what that's going to be like. But it's interesting how technology just keeps evolving and changing, and I'm there for that. And I'm not like trying to like diss this either. We're just in an era where this is what it is, and this is fine too. Like this is cool, but for me, I go back and forth between these kind of games all the time. Play like Shovel Knight and stuff, and then I go and I play actual retro games. And for me, my preference is the CRT stuff. Maybe because I grew up with it, but I just think it looks nicer.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of been a thing for me that's been hard to get by. I was like, when is it ever going to really look like a retro game? Because isn't that part of what they're trying to do here? They're trying to recreate that era and that style. I mean, just the fact that it's in widescreen, it's like, well, that's not right. It's not fucking 4/3.
Right.
It's not. It's just like you're giving me like half of what I'm looking for.
Would you want this game to be in 4:3 with the black bars on the sides? I don't think so.
That doesn't necessarily matter to me as much as being able to see it on a CRT. It could be widescreen, but
Well, one of the things that we struggle with as game developers is, in the retro games, everything was 4:3, right? Mm-hmm. There are people with ultra widescreen monitors. There are people with 16:9 monitors. There are people with 4:3 monitors. There's people with 16:10 monitors.
All over the place.
There's a 4:5 monitors that are on MacBooks and on Surface tablets. There's mobile form factors that are vertical. There's all of this.
Yeah.
And we need to make our game have pretty much the same experience
on everything.
Not only that, we go into frame rate issues.
This is why I never want to design video games myself, because that just seems like a nightmare and very challenging.
So right now in AVGN 1 and 2 Deluxe, there is a major fix for high frame rate monitors. So monitors that are over 60 hertz. Well, it's not a problem on PS4, Xbox, Switch, because they're locked to 60 hertz, but on Steam, we can't control that, right? So on the level where you end up on Santa Claus and you're
sliding down
the mountain, right? That area runs faster on a faster than 60 hertz monitor.
Which now, like, I don't speed run, but that almost makes me think, like, does there have to be a different scorekeeping thing if somebody's going to speed run the fucking game, on that versus, what console you're playing it on now?
And that is a relic of the fact that's from the old AVGN game that came out in 2012, and he used the old renderer of the old thing that didn't know that these things existed.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, well, now we're struggling with frame rate. Now every single game that was ever made needs to be able to handle high frame rates. Okay.
This is it's funny that we have a game that's getting into that now, because it's like it's like playing like old PC games like now on your modern computer. It's like, I went, you can, GOG fixes a lot of that type of stuff and makes it easy. But if it's not available, or somebody hasn't remastered it, and you go back and you're like trying to load up a game on DOSBox, and it's like, oh shit, I can't get it to run or whatever.
Right.
It's like that's what we're getting into.
Well, we're back to that. And we kind of need there to be like this line in the sand where we say, okay, for the next 20 years, All games are going to be 144 hertz or 120
You can't
hertz.
get everybody in the world to comply to that.
They're all going to be 4K. That's going to be what it is.
Yeah.
And we just do that. And that's what games are. Because all the man hours and time and effort expended, like, you're never going to have that experience again.
Right.
You're never going to play the AVGN snow level at the frame rate
It was
right, in 2012.
Right.
That's the thing, right? Unless we release a new thing. But when we release a new thing, it's going to be Blaster Master. It's going to be slightly different. It'll be slightly faster, slightly slower, slightly different. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Well, it's whatever.
Everything changes.
Time changes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Blaster Master Zero, I'll probably finish it. When it comes out. But that's going to be it for me for Blaster Master. And, you know, the next one, you know,
if they make Blaster Master 4, they're going to have to fucking really, like, make the game a 3D game or make it something totally different. I don't know. I'm not on the fucking development team. I'm not the guy who's responsible to have to come up with the idea, but, like, they have to change it big time. I
will tell you something that's cute about this game. We deal with games that are localized very professionally nowadays, where games are changed. The dialogue has changed very much from region to region, right? The dialogue of this game really well maintains the Japanese character of the original, like the translation. By the way, full disclosure, I think I know the person who translated this game. Okay. And I have to say that they kept the Japanese cultural references intact. The structure that you would have, the text and the way that they would speak. It's like looking at an anime sub of a literal. It's very literal, right? And I think that a lot of people who are fans of Japanese culture and will appreciate the way they do it, will appreciate that, rather than like a Final Fantasy VI style translation where they said, we're going to make it very Western and, you know, full circle, name the two soldiers Biggs and Wedge and do this and that.
Completely like Americanize it.
Completely like Americanize it. That is not what this is.
Well, that's good. That's probably for the best. But it's like, even that said, it's like you're still dealing with, you know, it's the same game for the third time now. Yeah. So, right. You know, that's why I say, like we were talking earlier about how the problems come from the core. You know? Yeah, exactly. It's like you gotta start from the beginning. Right. They started from day one of making the project. It was we're gonna make another Blaster Master. We're gonna make another Blaster Master. And it wasn't we're gonna make another Blaster Master, but this time let's change it and blow people's minds. Yes. It was we're gonna make the next one in the series. Here you go. Here it is. That's it. There it is. Yeah. And that's so, but you know, I feel like we're harping on this game, but I want people to know that this is just an example, because this goes on all the time with all kinds of games. This is just one example of that happening. Exactly. You know, so it's kind of like you know, I don't want to like fucking sit here and be like, oh, let's preach because we know everything or whatever. But it's I definitely feel like it's a problem. Definitely. Yup. So that's our podcast. This is where we get out this is where we don't have. This is every episode we seem to not know how to end these fucking things. We're not. So we're put on it. I'm gonna get my top hat on, which I have for my streams, and I'm gonna get a fucking cane, and we're gonna do a jig. Once we see, we had this idea for this fucking show, and we're like, well, Ryan's gonna talk about his game. I'm gonna talk about my game. We never talked about endings. Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. There's no ending. Yeah, so that was Talk About Games. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and on all the podcast services. This is what we do. Yeah, be sure to click the bell, all that good stuff. Or whatever you want to do. YouTube isn't recommending us as much as they used to, you know, what everybody else says. all that stuff.